Hello students, myself Richa Srivastava, your bio teacher. Today we will discuss chapter number 3, cell. Students, as you already know that this time you have to prepare your notebook. So 120 pages notebook you are supposed to use. Cover the page, and at the end of the chapter, whenever we are uploading the last part of the chapter, we will upload the PDF of the question and answer also. So what you are supposed to do, fill in the blanks on all objective questions like true, false, odd man out, that you are supposed to do it in your book itself. And the long answers like descriptive type of answers, long answers, short answer, differentiate between, define the following, these type of questions you are supposed to write it down in your copy. And few diagrams also we will tell you that you are supposed to draw. Those diagrams you are supposed to draw in your copy, and it should be labeled also. So that PDF we will attach at the last part of the chapter. Like if this chapter is split into 4 or 3 parts or 2 parts, so at the last part we will attach the PDF. I hope this part is clear to you. The copy should be completed because this time it will be assessed at a regular interval of time, unlike last year. Like last year we have not assessed your copy, so this time your copies will also be assessed, so please be prepared with your written work. Now we will come to our chapter part. So this is cell. Now student, what is the cell? Cell is the minute substance or the basic structural and functional unit of life. So when you will talk about the cell, it is the basic structural and functional unit of life. So cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. Now why I am saying this is structural and functional? Because cell is itself responsible for providing the structure, and it is having the ability to perform several functions. Now to explain it in more detail, I will give you an example of your own house. So you students, you see the building of your house, your school, your locality, any of the building you see, either it is a single story building or it is a kind of multiplex, your school building or any building. So what is the first thing that is used in the construction of that particular building, whether that building is small or that building is large? What is the very first thing that will come in its construction is what? A small piece of stone. I hope you might be familiar with the word stone or a brick. So the brick is the very first thing that is responsible for the construction of the house. Then all the bricks are joined together to form a wall. Then 4 walls are connected together to form the room. Then rooms together form the house. So similarly in our body also, first thing that is responsible for the organization or for the development of any organism, living organism, is what? Cell. So it is the minute substance. We cannot see it through our naked eye, but it is a very minute substance. So it is the first thing that will be responsible for the organization of any particular living being. Then what happened? These cells join together and they form the tissues. Then so many tissues join together to form an organ, then organ system, and similarly a organization or organism. So when we will compare it with the house, you can say that first thing that will come here is brick. What is the first thing that will come in our body is cell. Then bricks join together to form room. Then so many cells join together to form a tissue. Then rooms are joined together to form a, sorry, I am so sorry, I have written here room. It will be bricks joined together to form the walls. When a brick is joined together, it will form wall. So similarly, when cells are joined together, they form a tissue. Then when walls are joined together, they form a room. When cells join together, they form a organ. And then what happened? A group of rooms, means in any particular building, in any particular house, so many rooms are there. So later on it tends to a building. So group of rooms tends to a building. And similarly, a group of organ leads to the organism. Though in higher classes you will see that cell, tissue, organ system and then organism, but this is in your class 6 you are just supposed to learn about the cell. So I have just given a comparative study like brick as a cell, walls as a tissue, then tissues, walls joined together to room, similarly organs, then here building. Building forms the organisms. So this was about the overview of the cell and a comparative study of the brick or of the building to an organism. So it was about the overview of the cell. Now, when I am saying it that it is the first thing that is responsible for any development or any growth of the living organism. So cell, what is the basic characteristics of the cell that all the living organisms show is the growth, movement, reproduction, nourishment, like it is a common characteristics which I have mentioned here that all the living organisms, including humans, including the birds, including the plants and including all the living organisms whatever we see around us, they show the characteristics of growth. Like if any organism is smaller, they will grow in size. If any plant is smaller, they will grow in size. So they inhibit the growth. Then when you will talk about the movement, all the living organisms can move from one place to another except the plant cells or except the plants. Plants cannot move. Apart from plants, all the living organisms, or you can say the animal category like humans, birds, insects, all come under the animal category. So they can show the characteristics of the movement. Then reproduction. What is reproduction? That the organisms reproduce to produce the offspring or the children. So all the living organisms show the characteristics of the reproduction. And nourishment means they take food, they obtain the energy and then they grow. So these are the four characteristics, a common characteristics that is shown in all the living beings. So this is about the characteristics. Then we will talk about the I am only telling about the names of the types, otherwise later on we will discuss. So as I am saying that the cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. Now why I am saying structural? I am saying structural. Why? Because it provides the structure to any living organism. Why? Because it provides structure. And why we will talk about the functional? Because it is having a particular function. It performs a various function. So perform function. So cell is present in all the living beings. They are the structural and functional unit of life. Structural because it provides the structure, and functional because they perform the function. So this, I hope this definition is clear to you that cell is the structural and functional unit of life. Now when we will consider about the types of the cell, cell is basically of two types. So when you will talk about the types, cell is basically of two types, and I am saying that it is living organism. So what is the living organism that we broadly classify them is plants, and the second one is animals. Generally, living organism is roughly classified into plants and animals. In higher classes, you will read the other subdivisions, but at this stage, you must be knowing that the living organism is broadly classified into plants and animals. So, cell is of two types, plant cell and animal cell. So this plant cell and animal cell, we will discuss them in detail later on. First I will tell you the discovery of the cell, means any scientist who has discovered, who has observed it first. So now we will discuss about the discovery of the cell. Now, in year 1665, in the year 1665, Robert Hooke is a scientist who observed the dead cork, or he observed the thin cork of the plant, and he saw it under the microscope. So the scientist's name is Robert Hooke. He was the first scientist to observe the cell. Now how he observed? He took a thin slice of the cork. He took a thin slice of a cork, it is a bark of tree, and he observed it under his microscope. When he observed it under his microscope, he saw somewhat this type of structure. He saw somewhat this type of structure under his microscope. So when he saw this type of structure, he conceived it was looking like a small rooms to him. So when he saw this cubes, or when he saw this blocks, it was looking like a small rooms. So he considered, or he named them as cells. So the Robert Hooke was the first one to observe the cell, and he named them as cell. So one thing that Robert Hooke observed as dead cells, because he saw it under the cork, it is a bark of tree and it is dead in nature. So he was the first scientist to observe cell, but that cell was dead. This was about the Robert Hooke. Then the second scientist, is Anton van Leeuwenhoek. In some books it's given Antony van Leeuwenhoek, and in some books it is given Anton van Leeuwenhoek. Anton van Leeuwenhoek, in some of the book it is given Antony. So what happened? He observed a rainwater or a blood under his microscope. So what he observed? Rainwater and blood sample under his microscope, and what he observed, he again observed the same room like structure, but that he considered them as the living cell. So this scientists were responsible for discovering living cells. This was about discovery of the dead cells and the living cells. Now later on, 3 more scientists came together and they gave a cell theory. 3 more scientists, they came together and they gave the cell theory. Now we will see what is cell theory. Now we will discuss about the cell theory. So the 3 scientists, M. Schleiden, Theodor Schwann and Rudolf Virchow. These 3 names are given in your book, and other scientists' name also given in your book. Whatever I am writing on the board, the name can vary, because in some book this name is given, in some book that name is given. So please don't be confused about the spellings, or if you want you can follow the same spelling that is given in your book for your convenience. Now, cell theory, they 3 gave together cell theory. Now, what is cell theory? So, the first thing, all living organisms are composed of cell. As I have already told you that the living organisms are composed of cell. So, it is the first theory that all living organisms are composed of cells. Then the second one, as I have already told you, that cell is the structural and functional unit of life. So this is the second theory. And when you will talk about the third theory, it is saying that all cells arise from the pre-existing cell. Now what is the meaning of this pre-existing cell is, like the cells which are already present, they will give rise to a new cell. As I am already saying that cells divide together or they combine together to form tissue, and if any cell is formed, suppose any cell is formed, so that is because of the presence of previously present cell. So suppose if this cell is present in our body, so it will give rise to a new cell. So it will be present because of the pre-existing cell. So this was about the cell theory. Now we will talk about the size and shape of the cells. Now we will discuss the size and shape of the cell. The size and the shape of the cells vary from organism to organism, and the size also. So when you will talk about the average size, generally the size of the cell is up to 3 to 30 micrometer. This is micrometer. So it is very small in size. So what is the average range? It is from 3 to 30 micrometer. Then when you will talk about the smallest cell that is seen in a body is the RBC or red blood cells that are present in our body. So RBCs are the smallest cell. Then when we will talk about the longest cell, they are the nerve cells. Later on you will study the nervous system, in that you will be knowing about the nerve cells. So the longest cell is the nerve cell. And when you will talk about the largest cell, so the largest cell is a ostrich egg. So egg is itself a type of cell. So smallest, longest and largest. Now we will discuss about the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Now we will discuss about prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Now when we will talk about the prokaryotic cells, they are the cells in which membrane bound organelles are absent or missing. So the first characteristics that you will write down is membrane bound organelles are absent, or you can say they are less. Then when we will talk about the nucleus, nucleus is not well defined. Now when you will talk about the nucleus, nucleus is not well defined. So this is a kind of basic characteristics of prokaryotic cell. Now for this, a common example in which prokaryotic cell is present is bacteria. So you can say example will be bacteria or bacterial cell. So this was about the prokaryotic cell characteristics. Now we will discuss about the eukaryotic cells. Now when you will talk about the eukaryotic cells, it is a well defined cell organelle, cell membrane is present and the cell organelles are also present. So you can say well defined cell organelles are present, and nucleus is also well defined. Nucleus is also well defined. So, well defined cell organelles including the cell membrane is present, and nucleus is also well defined. Now, you will say what is nucleus? So, we will come one by one about the organelles also. So, this was a common example of prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Now, we will discuss about the structure of the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. As I am already telling you that prokaryotic cells, the nucleus is not well defined, and in case of eukaryotic, the nucleus is well defined. Then the cell membrane also is not clearly present, and in this cell membrane is present. In the case of prokaryotic, membrane bound organelles are absent. In case of eukaryote, membrane bound organelles are present. Now, when you will talk about the example, they are seen in the case of bacterial cell and they are seen under the case of paramecium. Now, when you will see the structure, it is a structure of bacteria and it is the structure of paramecium. It is a structure of bacteria and it is a structure of paramecium. So, the common example of prokaryote will be bacteria and eukaryote will be paramecium. Now, when you will see the diagram, you can see it is a outer covering is cell wall, then plasma membrane. Don't worry about the organelles, I will be telling you next about the organelles only. I am just telling what they are. Then it is chromosomal DNA and this is plasmid DNA. As I am already telling you that the nucleus is not well defined, that is why they split into chromosomal and plasmid DNA. Though these two parts in detail you will be studying in your higher classes. So, don't worry about this chromosomal DNA and plasmid DNA. Then when you will talk about the paramecium, and you can also say a flagellum is present here. So, why flagellum is present here? A flagella is present for the movement. So, the bacteria move with the help of flagella or flagellum. Singular is flagellum, when so many are present, flagella. Then here you can see in paramecium, a thread like structure is there, they are nothing else but the cilia. Again, cilia is for the movement. Then you can say plasma membrane is present here. Then you can say a fluid filled substance, cytoplasm is there. Then contractile vacuole is there. Now, this contractile vacuole, cytoplasm, plasma membrane, all the things we will discuss about the cell organelles, you will be able to understand. So, this is the overview of the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. Now, when we will talk about the size and shape of the cell, size and shape vary from organism to organism, as I have already told you, but the size and the shape is definite in case of all the organism. But two cases, one is WBC in case of white blood cell and the second is amoeba. Means this cell and amoeba cell, they change their shape at regular interval of time. Now, what is a standard diagram you can know about the amoeba is somewhat like this, but it is not like that ki amoeba will remain this only. After some time, amoeba can be about like this, then it can change their shape frequently. Similarly, in case of white blood cell also, they can change the shape frequently or at regular interval of time. Now, when you will talk about the shapes, so cells are of various types. They are cylindrical, they are long, they are spherical. So, when you will talk about the shapes, so the first one is spherical, somewhat like this. You can say a case of RBCs. Then you can say cylindrical. Then some pointed at ends, or you can say spindle shape, pointed cells also, and you can also say spindle shaped. Pointed or spindle shape, so they are somewhat like this. Now, in your book it is given also, like white blood cell shape is given, they may be spherical, oval, rectangular, spindle or cylindrical depending on the functions they perform. So, if you want, you can see the diagrams that is given on page number 36. Now we will be discussing about the cell organelles that are present in our body. So, as I am telling you that the cells are of two types, plant cells and animal cells. So, the common things that are present in both plant and animal cells we will discuss. So, a common three organelles that are present in both plant cell as well as animal cell is, first one is cell membrane, second one is nucleus, then the third one is cytoplasm. These are the three common things that are present in all the cells. First one is cell membrane, second one is nucleus, and the third one is cytoplasm. So this was about the name, but first we will discuss or we will take an overview of these organelles. So I am drawing a rough diagram. Suppose this is a plant cell. Now you will see, students, that a plant cell is having an outer hard covering. A plant cell is having an outer hard covering. So what is that outer hard covering? They are nothing else but the cell wall. Why I have written at that time cell membrane, cytoplasm and nucleus? Because this cell wall is only present in case of plant cells. Now, what is the main role of the cell wall? It acts as the protection shield, or it provides protection to the plants. So, the outermost covering is nothing else but the cell wall. So, this you will consider as the organelle number 1 that is present in the cell. I am just giving the overview. Don't think that Miss was talking about those three organelles and now she is explaining about the cell wall. I am just giving the overview of how the cell actually looks like. Then we will talk, cell wall is the outermost covering. Then we will talk about the inner covering just below the cell wall. So just below the cell wall you will see a membrane or a layer is present, somewhat like this. Just below the cell wall, a layer is present. This particular layer is known as cell membrane. So this layer, second layer, is known as cell membrane. Okay, so the second layer is known as cell membrane, and this we will talk about as the organelle number 2. Here I am writing it as plant cell because I am drawing it according to the plant cell. Cell wall is present, the outermost covering, then the second covering is cell membrane in case of plant cell. When you will talk about the animal cell, this particular cell membrane will be the outermost covering. I hope I am clear to you. When you will talk about the plant cell, cell wall is the outermost covering, and when you will talk about cell membrane is the second outermost covering. But in case of animal cell, this cell membrane is the outermost covering. So this was about the covering of the cell. Now one more thing, common thing you will see is a nucleus. A central nucleus is present. Nucleus is somewhat spherical in shape, and inside nucleus, nucleolus is present, and a fluid is present that is known as nucleoplasm. So this is the collective structure of nucleus. So now you will turn this one as nucleus, and this will be your third organelle. Now one more thing that is present, that is large in case of plant cell, you can see is a large vacuole. This is what? A vacuole. Vacuole is what? A kind of a space that is present in the plant cell to absorb the waste material for the excretion purpose or for the removal purpose. So this is what? Vacuole. This is organelle number 4. Now so many organelles are present, but I am just giving an overview. Now in the cell, in between the nucleus and the cell membrane, a fluid is present. I am repeating it again. In between the nucleus and the cell membrane, this whole area is filled with a fluid. This whole area is filled with a fluid. A fluid is filled in between. So this particular fluid is nothing else but the cytoplasm. So this fluid is filled in between the cell, and this fluid is nothing else but the cytoplasm. So this will be your 5th organelle. Now this vacuole and this cell wall is present only in case of plant cell. So I am underlining the organelles that are present only in plant cell wall and vacuole, or you can say large vacuole. Large vacuole is present only in case of plant cell, and in case of animal cell they are either absent or very small in size. Then cell membrane, nucleus and cytoplasm, these 3 organelles are present in both plant cell as well as animal cell. I hope an overview of the organelles are clear to you. Like we have discussed about the cell wall, we have discussed about cell membranes, nucleus, vacuole and cytoplasm are overview. So I hope it's clear to you. Now we will discuss the organelles in detail. Now we will discuss the organelles in detail. So the first organelle that is present or that is provided in your book is cell membrane. So the first organelle is cell membrane. Now students, if we will talk about cell membrane, as I have already told you that it is the outermost covering in case of plant cell and the second outermost covering in case of animal cell. So when you will talk about the characteristics of the cell membrane, some role must be there, that is why they are the outer covering. So the very first role that it provides is selectively permeable or selective entry of molecules. Means suppose this is a cell membrane. So it is having a fine pores, so that only suppose these many molecules are supposed to be enter inside the cell, but only few molecules will enter and rest will remain here only. Suppose these many molecules are about to enter the cell. So what it will do, it will allow only few of the molecules, selectively molecules to enter inside the cell and reject other molecules, and the other molecules that are not supposed to enter inside the cell, they remain outside. So what is the first thing that it allows is the selective permeable, or it acts as the protective shield. Now to explain the selective permeable, I will give you a very common example. You might have seen your mother preparing tea. So when she prepared tea, she used to strain the tea along with the tea leaves. So suppose this is your cup, and a tea is poured here. This is a pan and tea is poured here from the pan to the cup. So what is the main method that is used to pour the tea from the pan to the cup is what? A strainer is used. A kind of strainer is used. In that fine holes are present. So she used strainer to strain the tea. Now what happened? What is the role of this strainer? It acts as the separator. Now it will separate, the tea leaves will be deposited here and the clear tea will be poured inside the cup. So this tea strainer acts as the separator, and it's knowing that which substance it has to allow inside the cup and which substance is supposed to be kept above the strainer. So tea leaves is deposited here and the purified or the tea is poured in the cup. So the same role is about the cell membrane. Cell membrane is also having a fine pores, a small type of holes are present through which only selective molecules can pass and other molecules are supposed to stay outside only. So when you will talk about the characteristics, the first characteristic is it forms the outer covering. Outermost covering. Now when I am talking about the outermost covering in case of animal cells, and when you will talk about the plant cells, they are second layer in case of, so outermost covering in case of animal cells and second layer in case of plant cells. So this was about the characteristics. You can say in characteristics you can talk about the location. So this is about the location, that they are at the outermost and they are the second layer in case of plants and animals. Now when you will talk about the structure, they are thin, delicate, they are thin pores, or you can say they are fine pores. Pores means what? Holes. Fine pores or holes through which the substance can pass. So fine pores or holes. So they are the fine pores or holes through which the substance can pass, and it allows only certain molecules to pass. Then when you will talk about the function, this is about the characteristics. Under characteristics, location is outermost covering, and you in case of animal and in case of plant, second layer. Then you will talk about the structure. They are having fine pores or holes through which substance can pass. Now when you will talk about the function, what is the function? As I have told you, they allows the selective entry of molecules. So selective entry of the molecules means some molecules will enter and some molecules will remain outside the cell. So I hope the cell membrane part is clear to you. Then in my next video, I will be uploading about the other organelles. Meanwhile, what you are supposed to do, you are supposed to read everything whatever I have taught and be prepared. Thank you so much.